Hey guys, welcome back to the Mind Refinery Podcast. As usual, I am your host, Kyle Bodanis. Before we get started, if you haven't checked out and subscribed to the Mind Refinery YouTube channel, do it. Also, if you haven't seen the trailer for part 1 of the next episode of our culinary series, Plated, you can watch it on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/mindrefinery. We spent 5 months following legendary Toronto chef Suzanne Barr and her partner Johnny Carrots as they built their new restaurant, True Diner. This week on the Mind Refinery Podcast, we're talking about the Michael Jordan documentary, The Last Dance. I hope you all watched it. It was incredible. We held off on dropping this podcast because we wanted to get out the Adrian Forte interview to coincide with his ass kickery on Top Chef Canada. We had a lot of fun with this one. Hope you enjoy it. And now, without further ado, here's the show. So the next guy we have on our list, number 2, is Reggie Miller, one of my personal favorites.
Yeah.
Reggie Miller in this doc. Had you guys heard the Black Jesus story prior to this?
I think I heard it when he was on the Dan Patrick show. I think he told that story when I saw him on Dan Patrick.
Oh, yeah. I think he may have even in the Winning Time 30 for 30 might have said it too, because they were making fun of it because they interviewed his sister, who's obviously one of the greatest basketball players of all time, Cheryl Miller.
Yeah.
And she was like, he's annoying, and then it just talks to him about him coming in the league. And the thing that they didn't put in the story was that it was or maybe they did, correct me if I'm wrong, it was the veterans on the team who were telling him he needs to talk shit to Jordan to be more like in the league and like, you know, this, and knowing for a fact that he would say something and then Jordan would just be all over him for likely his entire career.
Yeah.
But the best Reggie Miller thing is he doesn't back down to Jordan.
No, he had the skills to back it up too.
And he was skinny. And to be confident after, so like to stand up to somebody like Jordan in that scenario and never back down, but then to also just hit these daggers all the time at all these crucial moments. I also just love how he talks. Reggie Miller's just always smiling when he says stuff, and it just connects. I could love to listen to any Reggie Miller interview.
He's one of my favorites growing up.
He's a great interview.
I loved the 3-ball. I love it when he's the commentator for basketball. If I'm watching a game and it's going to be Reggie Miller, his stories are the best. He's always throwing in anecdotes. He's hilarious. He takes himself seriously, but it's also like there's a humor with it as well. Yeah. But he's got that killer instinct. Obviously, I've been a fan of him since since I was little, but also the 30 for 30, the Winning Time documentary about him and the Knicks, really kind of cemented it for me. He's fucking hilarious. And this whole thing with him and Spike Lee, I love that Spike Lee got some action in this documentary. I like that we saw that. But I mean, the fact that he was willing to go at Michael Jordan, especially after he got embarrassed by him as a child, his willingness to go at him is impressive. And then they just kind of, talk to each other after the game. Hey man, how's it going? All this kind of stuff. And, I was really, really, really happy they included him in it. And it really kind of raised those thoughts in my head about like, what happens if that Indiana team can just hold the lead? Cause they pulled out in that, they were starting to pull away a bit in that 7th game. And then like, that was it.
Yeah.
Then Jordan.
Yeah. Then fucking Jordan. Michael Jordan. And then obviously Reggie Miller's, status as basketball and a basketball legend, up in the air because he didn't win again. And it's so many people who haven't won because Michael Jordan existed.
So many. But yeah, no, I love Reggie Miller's interviews. Like even when he wasn't in this documentary, I've seen a bunch of either radio interviews that he's done, and he's just hilarious to listen to, because especially now that everything's over, he's definitely got a sense of humor about everything. Especially when he talks about things like Spike Lee or the Black Jesus story with Michael Jordan is just so funny.
Also, Kyle, you might be able to speak to this a little more. Reggie Miller's style kind of changed the game a bunch too, didn't it?
He was ahead of his time. He's a 3-ball shooter. Obviously he's one of the best shooters of all time. If Steph Curry never existed, it would be between him and Ray Allen. And then obviously, that now Steph and Clay are here, but he's incredible. I just think that, he just wasn't the top tier of player. He just wasn't like the very top tier. He didn't have that, total killer instinct. And again, this guy when he had opportunities to get there, he ran into Michael Jordan and he ran into the Lakers with Kobe Bryant and Shaquille O'Neal. Those are your two big shots of trying to make it happen. Yeah. One thing I did like though that he was included in those Space Jam practices.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm glad you mentioned that. I did not want to not touch on that. That's my favorite part. I want to watch an entire documentary on that, like a fly on the wall documentary on those scrimmages. It's
Well, was it him that said it was some of the best basketball that any of them have ever played?
Yeah.
yeah. Was that
Right.
Miller?
Yeah, I think it was. I think Reggie Miller said that.
Yeah, because they got everybody there, and and I think this is kind of speaks to why the Isaiah Thomas not shaking the hands thing pissed off Jordan specifically, is
Mhm.
because Jordan includes these guys as part of like a fraternity,
Yeah.
Right.
even if they are at each other's throats. Like at that point, it wasn't like they hadn't done the conference finals against Indiana, and really the big moment of Jordan. The first time Jordan plays Miller, there is some shit talking, but he still brings him into it, and there's this group of individuals that he considers part of a circle that he respects, and I think that's and anytime you're getting recognized by a player of his caliber, that's pretty intense.
Wasn't
Yeah.
that cool though that he only brought in like he didn't bring in his friends or his teammates necessarily. He just brought in like the elite basketball players.
Because he wanted to be
Yeah.
good. If he was practicing against schleps or people that weren't up to his caliber, it wouldn't have worked for him. His whole thing was, I need to be into shape. I need to be ready to do this.
Yeah.
And I need to be at the absolute highest competitive level. So you don't do that by bringing in guys who aren't good. Straight up.
Yeah. I just like how he had basically one summer to try and turn it all around after baseball, and then the way that he does it is just to bring everybody out
Yeah, because they lost
to the
in the,
Warner's lot, right?
yeah,
Just
and
to
because they
play
lost the Magic
basketball.
and then they lost the Magic as well,
Yeah.
right? So
Mhm.
that's where you got the trainer that we should have mentioned in honorable mentions, the trainer who just cries, who cries
That's
because
right.
who
Yeah.
cries because Jordan is so like his work ethic is so high. He's just like, and then he came to me after the game and he was like, I want to do squat thrusts until I can throw up. And then
Yeah.
the guy's like, and then this guy's like, oh, this guy, I was so inspired by his complete utterness of being a sociopath, and all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, okay, this guy's on his tip a little too hard.
Yeah.
You guys remember though how sick was that? Remember, I think it's after they got beat by the Pistons before they had won anything, and then they had to get all jacked. And then they show
Yeah.
the interviews, and the whole team just got so fired up. And then that Michael became like the image of him that you know now, because he just looks all like still looks kind of skinny, and like somebody, some man, maybe Superman, could push him over. And then afterwards, it's just like, oh my, he's just the most ripped dude ever for the rest
Yeah.
of his career.
So I want to move on to number 3, Scottie Pippen, a polarizing figure in this documentary. What did
I
you
love
guys
that.
think of Scottie Pippen after this?
You mean my new grandpa Scottie Pippen, who I want to like sit and like just like hang out and have a beer with on the porch and listen to him tell me awesome stories? I loved how I think time is a friend of that, but like kind of feels like he looks back on everything fondly, even though there were things that weren't. And he has this just I honestly think, and maybe it wasn't at the time, but I think he really has a wisdom about him. Like it would not have been easy to be in Scottie's position. There's not that many humans that can be that good at something and then still take a backseat to somebody and not, you know what I mean? It's like
And not have it be part of the mania that makes up their personality.
right,
Like,
and it's the guitarist that needs to go be the lead singer, the drummer that needs to whatever. That is always what happens. And if anybody ever in sports had a reason and a motivation to like demand a trade or to find a way to opt out or whatever, and it doesn't, like, yeah, he didn't do that. He just played second fiddle for the whole time. And then it really, at what point, you're just part of the apparatus. You're not second anything. He was just
Let me ask just one thing, because I wasn't 100% sure about this. I believe he came out with a statement after this saying he was a little disappointed with how he was portrayed.
Yes, he did.
Is that correct? And what exactly was the gist of that? Like, what was it that he wasn't happy with?
I didn't read too much into it. Like, it from surface level didn't seem like he was too specific about it. It's just overall. I wasn't even sure if he made it through like a statement or if it was through an interview. But I mean, actually, it could have been on the jump. He wasn't happy because it talked about, like, what did you think it was going to talk about?
Well, that's what I mean. Like, I was just wondering, because I believe I heard what you heard, was that he wasn't too specific about what it was. Maybe it was just the fact that it was finally all out, and the whole thing about him not going back on the court because the play wasn't going through him, or the part about how he was underpaid. I don't know. Did he maybe think that it wasn't?
Well, it's because
that he didn't. Yeah.
Maybe he. Okay, here's what I think. I think he didn't. I think they didn't know what everybody said, right? So he went in, so maybe he didn't know all the things that were said. I don't know prior to, like, I don't know if he saw a cut of this prior to it or what. Is this the first time? I would like to think he probably saw a cut of it before, because I know members of the media were able to see it ahead of time, because I know Bill Simmons was talking about it ahead of time. And it's probably the part where, they say this is one of those moments that people remember.
Yeah.
With the whole deciding not to come on the floor because the play's not going to go through you. I mean, the coach had to say fuck him.
Yeah.
The coach had to say to the best player on the team at that point, because Jordan wasn't on the team, fuck him.
Yeah.
Tough.
Yeah.
That's not a good look.
Let's put ourselves in Pippen's shoes. So no stranger to the limelight, no stranger to short quotes of his being played, but like, this is a documentary event of the year for sure. Like one of the probably media events of the year. Mm-hmm. And this is like tens of millions of people are watching this thing. And so what happens if just like one little scene just that wasn't right or whatever? Like, you could see how overwhelming that would be to watch this, given the context and knowing what's happening right now. And I think he was also very careful not to really, like, he didn't really slander anybody else either. No. So maybe he was conscious of that.
Just
and
Jerry Krause.
Felt some of them.
Just
Jerry Krause. But it sounds like that was kind of.
And Isaiah Thomas. I think he took shots at Isaiah Thomas.
Yeah.
Because they were both like, fuck him.
Like, it would seem to me like some of the things that he may not have liked when they were talking about how he would throw, insults at Jerry Krause on the bus and shit like that. Like, I don't know, maybe some of that was exaggerated, maybe it wasn't. But the one thing I will say about Scottie Pippen in this is that I definitely sympathize with him more now, having seen that.
Yeah.
Like, especially in regards to his contract and in regards to how important he actually was to that team. Like, without Scottie Pippen, you're not fucking winning.
No, you're not.
Like,
you're not winning without probably the best perimeter, at least one of the best perimeter defenders of all time.
No, like Jordan or not, you're not winning without Scottie Pippen.
Well, because they didn't. That was the thing that I did, like, just a little sidebar that leads to that point, is that they accepted that Jordan wasn't the only thing, because when they lost to the Magic, like, they didn't have Rodman and they didn't have Horace Grant, so they were getting killed on the fucking the backboard. So it shows that you need somebody, and then without Scottie Pippen, you have no secondary scoring. You have a complete isolation of Jordan, essentially. Which was happening when he was, when there was the contract dispute. And that's one thing I think did really well in making him, very clearly more important. But then kind of when he had the opportunity to be a leader and all this kind of stuff, left the floor. Right. Yeah. That's kind of a big thing. But I think that he was kind of taking advantage of it in his contract, because, they made him sign for a long-term contract. His family's poor, and he needs to make sure, and he was very, very paranoid. They talk about the Jordan rules a lot. He was super paranoid to be, in poverty again. He didn't want his family to be in poverty. So a lot of why he took the money and took everything as quickly as he did is because he didn't want to have to worry. And I guess he didn't see that obviously this whole thing was going to go into the stratosphere at some point.
My opinion of him only has improved since seeing the documentary.
I will say this about Scottie Pippen. His voice sounds like the guy who plays Jaws, but smoother. This is like
That's
smooth.
what I meant by old Grandpa Scottie Pippen. He's just got this. I just love how he talks.
If he talked for more than 10 minutes about a story I maybe wasn't interested in, I'd fall asleep.
Yeah,
One-
but you'd have the best sleep.
Yeah,
reminds
it's so
me of the
smooth. It's like
the
velvet.
guy. He reminds me of that one guy from the movie Airheads, when he's just like Milo, Milo, Milo.
Yo, I forgot. Airheads. If you haven't seen the motion picture Airheads, please do. It's a certified classic. Is the Criterion out for you? Okay, guys. I was
Quick
going to move
more
on.
thing about Scottie Pippen. Just I hope that people reached out to him afterwards, because as a viewer, as somebody who's wasn't there and was whatever, just watching this fresh, not knowing too much about Scottie and his role off the court there, he was portrayed excellently. He came off looking amazing. So you know what I mean? If he saw something, or he didn't like something Jordan said or whatever happened in general, I hope that people reached out to him and was just like, no, man, like, with all love. What was the thing that Jordan actually said about him? There's that one part where he just says Scottie Pippen is hands down the best. I can't remember exactly what he was talking about.
Yeah,
But specific aspect of his game was just like, and isn't there also a line like, without Scottie, there's no Jordan? He says that himself.
Yeah, he does.
That's the highest praise you can get in the game of basketball.
From that 100%. Anyways, guys, we got to move on.
Uh-oh.
Dennis Rodman, the Worm. The Worm, one of the greatest defensive rebounder of all time.
Yeah.
How much of this did we know going into it in terms of us? I feel like a lot. Obviously, this whole thing played out in the late 90s.
Yeah, obviously more, because he was so he was in the media for the shock, for the shock rock thing, and in all the tabloids, and of course Carmen Electra.
It transcended basketball.
Yeah, it to the point that it was like more his presence in the media was more about the other stuff than his presence in basketball, to the point that people didn't actually realize how amazing, non-basketball fans didn't actually realize that he was the real deal.
Yeah. He's my favorite character in the documentary, outside of Phil Jackson, I think. And I guess that's kind of fitting, since they both had a really good relationship. But like, for me at least, I knew only what really the media portrayed about Dennis Rodman, at least until like maybe the last couple years and stuff like that, when he started going to North Korea and all that stuff. But just the most misunderstood athlete maybe of all time, just from a personality perspective, is Dennis Rodman. I feel like, and it's just hilarious that the only one that seemed to have really figured him out was the head coach.
That's another testament to Phil Jackson's genius. I think.
Absolutely.
I think with Dennis Rodman, this guy wanted to play basketball, was not a part of the culture around it. Like, he wanted the game, but not the culture and the level of discipline that was in order to play it. But I really, the whole idea of him having to go on a bender because he had to be like good for 10 games while Scottie Pippen was dealing with the whole situation, with his whole contract situation. It's pretty hilarious, and then Jordan talks about how, Rodman's falling apart and he's getting sketchy, he's getting itchy. He wants to go out and then like just has to leave the team. And I don't know, do piles of cocaine. I have no idea.
Everybody has their own way of unwinding, Who's to say?
I did love
cocaine. Always makes me unwound.
Yeah.
There's nothing like a cool, relaxing cocaine.
Yeah.
In the evening.
It's like, I'm super anxious right now. I want to do a bump.
Yeah. Hey man, everybody's different.
I'm having a panic attack about all this media, man. The pressure, I can't handle it.
I'm getting paranoid. Let's do a line.
I think I really loved, it was such a testament to Rodman as a player, the way that Jordan even accepted this part about him, and obviously it frustrated him at times, but it was a really good, for me, just an example, honestly, for anybody, all of us that are doing anything, is like, he had his personality and his own hangups and stuff, but when it came to his mission, he just showed up. Dennis Rodman is the example of showing up. He does these things. We talked about it's crazy for him to take that hiatus or to party or whatever, and then he shows up to the point that somebody who didn't even partake in any of those things for, I think, like most of his career, in Jordan, respected him as a man, because he just realized, okay, this guy, when I have him, he's his own man, but when I have him, he is 100% here and 100% dedicated to what we're trying to do.
And that whole Jordan beat, when Jordan's like, it's just you and me, Dennis. You're the only one I can rely on.
Yeah.
It's like he takes that to heart. He's like a kid when the teacher's like, okay, you can be my special helper. And he's like, oh, sweet. And then he just didn't do cocaine for a bit. And then, and I apologize if Dennis Rodman has not done cocaine, but I can only assume if you need, I'm assuming that if you have to go have a bender in Vegas for like 3 days because you were just doing, like, I don't know. Maybe
You
it's
might
just
have
like,
done a line.
you might have done a line. You may have done a
Yeah.
line.
The only bender in Vegas that didn't include cocaine of all time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think you would really just, I just look up to him for that example of, we can all be that. None of us might be perfect at what we do or what we're striving for as a parent, as a whatever, but you could, parent, that's a perfect example. You could be the dad that might stay up and have a Dennis Rodman style night. Are you there 7 a.m. anyway to take your kid to practice? That's what Rodman gave from that. And especially because he's had
I would say don't get too crazy with that, because they talked about him not showing up to practice.
Him specifically.
I'm gonna say he played well.
He played there.
Yeah. He got. I mean, other than in the some games in the final year, stretches of games in the final year where he was just a kind of a mess. His entire career, those first 2 years with the Bulls, the guy is like, he's on it. He's on it. He's a vicious defender. He is a voracious rebounder. He's not even that. I mean, he's 6'8". That's not big for under the bucket. But he did it through positioning and power. And like when they go through him talking about how to do a rebound.
Oh yeah, I love that part. He would just practice and just watch where the ball went and just figure it out and could read it like
and
nobody.
Study shooters to see, like on TV, to see how they were doing it. And I do think, John, that this idea of him being misunderstood is completely correct, because again, sports has an orthodoxy, and if people like go out of it, it's especially then in basketball. Like right now, you get a little bit more there's more individual expression. I think Allen Iverson was someone who really helped usher that in terms of making it, like pushing the envelope and making it acceptable, and bringing a different cultural impetus to it. But I really think that, I mean, in his book, he talks a lot about loving basketball. It's just he can't live like these other people live.
I mean, think about if social media was around in those days with Rodman, like how much crazier it might have been, because you weren't getting access to everybody 24/7 back then, and he was still seemed crazy to most people anyway, even without that. But I mean, and also, by the way, you wouldn't be able to get away with half of the things you got away with if you weren't as good as he was. You can go on a bender as long as you fucking,
as long as you're bringing down 20 boards in a playoff.
Yeah, as long as you come in next game and kill everybody, then we're good.
I think Rodman also, like, the NBA has really been a pioneer in personal expression and not suppressing that, and not having this military style thing we see, especially in sports like hockey. And I think he would be one of the people that, the first ones that really, really pushed that envelope, but then also made a lot of space for a lot of other athletes to just be themselves. We're not.
Yeah. Well, think about how many athletes in basketball specifically who are just themselves. He set the bar pretty high for being out there, right?
Yeah.
So everyone that's sort of been out there since has not quite really hit that
exactly
bar of being out there, because of just how, out there he was. Not that that's a bad thing. He was just out there.
Yeah, and even to the detriment of the league sometimes too, because he's like, because it'll be like, oh, this person just got charged up on domestic abuse, but then it will never be as big a deal as when fucking Rodman colored his hair.
Yeah, he's got weird hair.
Yeah, he's got weird hair.
But think about that. That was weird. He looked shocking at the time. Like you didn't know anybody. There was no other athlete that was looking like that. Not that I can think of. It was very had the Manson effect.
Yeah, I was about to say the closest thing that looks to an athlete looks like an athlete to do that is Marilyn Manson.
Yeah.
The least athletic looking person humanly fucking possible. He doesn't even have skin pigment.
Hey, man. I challenge Marilyn Manson to a game of basketball. I dare you.
I dare you. He's like,
you might get embarrassed.
He's like Prince. All right, guys, I want to move on to the final person we have here, who I think, just in general, for like a period of 4 years of his life, got a raw deal. Toni Kukoc.
He was on my list.
He's on my list too. Vinny, I don't know. Vinny did why? Let's talk about why we put him on the list before we admonish Vinny for not putting him on the list.
Honestly, like, why did I put him on the list?
Why'd you put him on the list? Yeah.
Just because I had seen the Dream Team documentary before I had seen this series, obviously. So the only thing I really knew about Toni Kukoc was in regards to the Dream Team, about how Jordan and Pippen were just all over his ass because Jerry Krause was courting him for the Bulls. And I just love how now with this documentary, how, not only did he gain their respect, he joined their fucking team and won all these championships with them. It was just something about that I thought was kind of cool. He went from being like the mortal enemy to standing shoulder to shoulder with Jordan and Pippen winning championships. Just that alone to me was kind of cool. And to be able to kind of see all those great highlights and see all the interviews and just see all of that footage that they were able to get. I don't know, there was just something redeeming and just really.
You know what it was like? I think maybe it would like hit home a little bit too. One of those situations where it's like, your ex's new boyfriend or something, and you have every reason to hate this person, or it's like a new person in the crew that might whatever threaten your position, and like they had like all this reason to bully him and hate him, and then he just obviously kind of won everybody over and was like a loved part of the team.
For sure.
And I think that's a pretty relatable little story. And especially when they talk about the part, he's like, I didn't know. Like, he was just like, he was like kind of unaware that he was like the focus of like this entire ire and this like crazy backstory.
Because all this shit, and I don't think they talked about it enough in terms of putting it into context, how long this idea of Toni Kukoc is coming to the league, he's coming to the team, he's going to be the future of the team, and all this kind of stuff in the Jordan Rules, the book, and that's about the first championship, 91. Mm-hmm. They're talking about it the whole year.
Yeah.
They're talking about at least the second half of the year. They're like, Jerry Krause is openly talking about this guy, Toni Kukoc, talking about how much they want to get him and all this stuff. And Scottie Pippen's like, man, I'm still making this much. I'm making like nothing. And then when he got his contract and everyone knew what it was, it's like, what if you're Scottie Pippen? Like, what are you going to think about that, right? So because it raises your animosity towards Toni Kukoc, who at this point is coming from a war-torn country, who I'm sure needs more conflict. And then, and then Jerry Krause, because he was willing to not take care of one of his own before he was willing to take care of one of his own.
And I think that's a tough situation to walk into if you're Toni Kukoc. Again, highlighted in his interview where he didn't really seem to know what was happening.
Yeah, he's
right?
like, I do not know what is happening. And I'm like, of course he doesn't know what's happening. These guys are like, we're gonna kill this motherfucker. And I'm like, right? And if I was them, I'd be like thinking that. I've said that today about people who have done way less than what was happened than what happened there. I'm like, the guy didn't put the right beans on my burrito. I'm like, those are black beans. I hate you.
Yeah,
I want pinto beans.
That kind of shows their and I love. Okay, again, I'm going to keep going back to the access. There's so many interviews from all of the ages of especially Scottie and Mike that you saw them grow. They were emotionally unable to handle that situation. I think that's part of why they ended up liking him, because they saw that he was good and they loved his like gutty performance in that Olympics. But then they also probably like pulled their head out of their ass and realized that their hate was for Krause and not for him at all. Like, it was just like
they're trying to hurt Krause through proxy.
Yeah, that's literally what they were trying to do. That's literally what they were trying to do.
At the expense of some kid that was just like, again, the sickest basketball player from from a war-torn country. Like that whole
And he
story
stayed.
was
This was the big thing too, because they signed him, but he was like, I can't come right away because he didn't want to be. And this I respected a lot. He didn't want to be seen as a guy who, when the Civil War was starting, just bailed.
Yeah.
Wow.
And when he says that, I'm like, I don't even know what that's like. I'm like, I need to get out of here right now. Like, I'm leaving. My family, I hope they're okay, but I'm leaving because there's gonna be a war.
Where does Kukoc fall in line of like the big Eastern European players? Was he one of the first kind of superstar from there, or is there a bunch?
Arvydas Sabonis, I would think, is definitely. You got guys like Arvydas Sabonis, Vlade Divac.
Right.
These are the guys. These are kind of the George Mirasan, who is taller than any human I've ever seen in my entire life. I saw George Mirasan PS play in person, and it's like a fucking something from another time period just walked into the door, like in there. It's like, oh sweet, some Lord of the Rings shit just happened, and fucking. So I guess my overall answer to that is not one of the pioneers. I don't think he was in, the top 10 of those guys, especially, top 10 Euros, especially when we're looking back now and we've had
from now's perspective, that's kind of was what
from Peja Stojakovic, one of my favorites, fucking growing up. Obviously Dirk Nowitzki, Luka Doncic obviously is ridiculous already.
Even Giannis, right?
Giannis. Nikola Jokic, like these guys are Giannis Antetokounmpo, grabbing him from Greece. It was tough for Euros coming in because I think, as I said, there was the stereotype that they're soft, and that kind of dripped into all sports. Although I haven't seen many former Yugoslavians who are soft.
Yeah.
Like, I've never been like, yo, that Serbian guy is soft. It's like, nah, man. It's like we in the West are soft.
Yeah.
Right? Because they're like, oh, my country's being torn apart, and we're like, there isn't enough peanut sauce on this peanut butter parfait. Right? Like these are like, there's a massive difference in problems. And I thought the fact that he was able to come in and get his ass kicked and treated poorly, and they're talking like shit, talking to him like shit, and then all of a sudden he comes back, does better even in a losing effort in the gold medal game, and then is a very important part of the team. Yeah. And they were trying to go play the final shot through him. And I think that was kind of like against the Magic, and that was the culmination of this whole thing, wanting to do that play through him and not Scottie Pippen.
Yeah. Right? I just like how he had history with them before he joined the Bulls. And
I didn't know about that part.
Yeah, that I just think knowing that gives it so much more depth, just as far as, his importance to that team at that time, and that history just makes it a bit richer. But I just thought his appearance in it was great.
Well, gentlemen, on that note, we have compiled our list. To run it down again: Phil Jackson, Reggie Miller, Scottie Pippen, The Worm, Dennis Rodman. By the way, if you haven't seen his Hall of Fame induction speech, I would watch it. I would definitely watch it. And number 5, Toni Kukoc. Gentlemen, thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it. We'll talk to you soon.
Talk soon. Thanks.
Peace.
All right, guys, thanks for listening. Just a reminder, if you like this podcast and want to keep hearing it, subscribe and give us a 5-star review. And if you're not already subscribing to our YouTube channel or following us on social media, get on it. You will not regret it.